Hello there. The Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit took place in Kigali concurrently with the GSMA Mobile World Congress Africa, drawing together hundreds of participants from across the continent to chart the future of mobile economy. At the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit, discussions revolved around technology as an enabler to drive Africa's growth, climate justice and the importance of climate finance, digital inclusion for all, and the fourth industrial revolution. The summit also centered around the role of digital infrastructure to fuel Africa's growth, as well as the need to accelerate digital transformation to fast-track trade in Africa. In this segment of Focus On, we bring you those conversations with leaders in Africa. My name is Julius Bismongo.
There cannot be shared value unless we achieve inclusivity. So digitization, as you ask, can never be one where we progress by leaving the foundation of the pyramid behind. It has to be inclusive because the economy lives at the foundation of the pyramid. So that's a big takeout for me. You know, His Excellency Paul Kagame said, progress cannot be at the expense of the most vulnerable. And so if you have to find the link between digitization and shared value, one is an enabler of the other to make sure that as companies digitize, as we go through digital transformation, we're coming along with people with us. I'll give you an example. In ABSA Kenya and across the ABSA group on the continent, yet we are digitizing, but we're ensuring that people are not just financially included, but they're accessing financial services. Because you can have digital platforms for people to be included in the financial system, but if they can't access credit or insurance or payments, then what's the use of that digitization? So we are measuring financial access, and with that we've seen tremendous increase with an innovation we came up in Kenya, where we implemented a mobile wallet, Timiza. It has got now 5 million people included in the financial system. And we're trying to find out how those people access financial services to make sure that as we drive digitization, more inclusivity goes up, and we end up in a space where we're coming along with people. In other words, prosperity or value is shared. And this is a conversation that we'll continue to have as industry players.
Right. I mean, obviously, you cannot talk about financial inclusion without talking about mobile money, which has played a very key role, not just in Kenya, but here in Africa. You alluded to, your role in mobile money innovations, but could you expound more on your role when it comes to mobile money innovations in Kenya?
So Kenya, 50 million people, 65 million mobile devices, right? So more mobile devices than the people in the country. So you've got to look at that infrastructure and ask yourself as a financial services player, what do you do with it? And anyone who is not thinking about financial services through the mobile, they're building a business that is A, is not sustainable, and 2, is backward integrated. If people want to find services as easily and as possible on mobile financial devices. So it's not a singular challenge for ABSA, it's actually the entire industry. And so as I said, we developed a proposition that in the first 100 days, there were 1 million people connected to that platform on mobile money. You can send payments for free. You don't have to pay. You can pay. When you're paying with your own finances, why do you need to pay? You can send money across for free. You can save, earn interest rate. You can buy insurance at the micro level, less than $50. So we've also moved along with this micro financial services where you don't need long-term structured products, filling forms for a term loan or buying insurance, looking at pages and pages for a long life insurance or car insurance. That micro financial services, when you bring those together with mobile technology, you reach more people. You include more people in the system, and it's good for business.
It is not just ABSA Kenya that is tapping into the power of mobile to drive inclusion, but Vodacom has also been on top of the business. In this conversation with Stephen Chege, the Chief External Affairs Officer at Vodacom, shares insights into what role leaders can do to drive inclusion.
Africa is doing well in terms of being well represented, in terms of connectivity and pushing the digital agenda. However, there are a number of things that we could do better. From the offset, I want to start out by saying that our policymakers and our regulators are doing a great job. But if you look at certain areas, we could do better and increase that capacity. At the moment, Africa's potential in this space is valued at $115 billion. It is projected that this will go up to over $700 billion by 2050. But we need to take certain concrete steps to position Africa well to be able to get that dividend. The areas which we need to be careful about is making sure that every person who should be covered in Africa actually has a connection. 60% of us in Africa access the mobile internet, the internet through mobile phones. That's our first touch point. And unfortunately, we have a large proportion of our continent still not covered at all. 210 million people don't have any form of coverage. And this speaks to that challenge about Africa positioning itself well in the digital space. Most of the coverage, as I've pointed out, and access to the internet is provided by mobile service providers like Vodacom. And what would help us be able to roll out services to customers and ensure that all of Africa is covered is a number of things, first of which is a good regulatory environment. Our policymakers, as I've said, have done a good job, but more can be done. If you look at that space, there are quite a number of sector-specific taxes that impact the mobile industry. Because of those, getting the service out to the customers is impacted. And again, it comes to them at a cost. Certain countries actually place taxes on mobile devices, which means that it is harder for people to access these devices and therefore harder to play their role in the internet space. So these are things that we need to look at and ensure that they're streamlined so that we are not creating barriers that prevent our people from taking part in that agenda. The other thing that we need to look out for is rural coverage. As I've pointed out, a large proportion of our people are not covered at all. And the constraints are there. And we need to ask ourselves the question whether these universal services funds that are created by almost every other regulator, whether they're really working. Mobile operators pay a certain percentage of their revenues to these funds. And ideally, the funds should be able to help to cover and roll out services. But it's been years we've been observing, and this is simply not happening. So we need to rethink how that space can be addressed. Rural coverage will mean bringing more people into access and therefore opening up the opportunity for them to participate in mobile and communication. These are some of the steps that we need to consider and take seriously. The last one I'd mention is very specific on devices. Devices remain a big barrier for people to access normal services as well as the internet. Our countries need to have a holistic view of ensuring that customers can actually get the device that they need to be able to play in the broadband space. Most of the mobile networks are now operating at 4G level, but you'll see that quite a number of our customers still hold on to 2G mobile phones. And we need to take a critical view about this, 2G and 3G, and make sure that we can actually start migrating our customers to a 4G standard and in time to 5G. And this means that policymakers must look at the whole device ecosystem, the taxes that are placed on them, the difficulty that is there to replace a handset for a common woman or man, and make this less burdensome to ensure that our people are more connected.
While banks make up the largest share of the financial market and have played a major role in driving inclusion, insurance companies have not been left behind. Annie Bishaka, the managing director of Old Mutual Rwanda, speaks about why it's important for the insurance companies to innovate to accelerate rural coverage and access.
Add value is a journey to motivate maybe and engage our stakeholder in achieving solutions to their challenges. And as an institution, we do have maybe the shared, we have social challenges that we face and our customers are facing. Let's talk about, we are in the digital platform, so let's talk about the digital. If we think of the challenges, maybe our SMEs and our clients, customers. Talk about SMEs because they are small and medium enterprises which are trying to grow and contribute to the growth of the economy of the country. Maybe we need to avail some solutions for them so that they get to us as quickly as possible. The financial sector has, I mean, when I talk about financial, the banks have tried to do a very good job in the same, but we also need, as insurance and other financial sector, to avail solutions for those people, because if I talk about the insurance, it is definitely something that will help us to increase the penetration rate in the government, which is, in the population, which is very low compared to the rest of the East Africa. It's still in the 1% penetration rate when it comes to insurance, 1.5, 1.7, and we see some countries which are at 2%, 2.5. So what can we do? Maybe digital is the solution that we are all waiting for.
At the 6th Annual Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit, it became clear that when purpose-led companies are mobilized to create a shared value, this can drive a new wave of productivity and innovation on the continent. Both Tiki Barnard and Vuyo Luteke from the Shared Value Africa Initiative emphasize this.
So, Africa needs connectivity. And we believe that in order to take Africa to the next level from an economic perspective, we really, really need to bring connectivity to all. Because we cannot expect Africa to rise, on the economic platform globally if we don't have connectivity. So when GSMA reached out to us to say, do we want to, be partner with them and deliver the Africa Leadership Summit here in Kigali, we thought about it, we spoke about it, we went to our board and everything, and it was the right decision, because bringing the ICT community together with different sectors will help the collaboration to actually drive the change that we need to bring the connectivity to our people.
Yeah, and before I go to Vuyo, then what do you think this will actually do for the African continent?
I think that I believe, though, Tessie, that this is where we're building the global future. We've got a young youth dividend, and my colleague Vuyo can talk a little bit about that, but we've got the youth dividend. So therefore, for me, if we can get connectivity right and we can empower and equip and provide information to our women and our youth, we can take Africa to its rightful position on the global stage and create the Africa we want.
I'm glad you've mentioned women and youth, because we're coming to that in Vuyo. Let me bring you into this conversation. As shared value practitioners and advocates, how do you see the shared value changing the African business landscape?
So, I think we're all quite aware that for the longest time, and even now to an extent, Africa has always been seen, as a continent in need. The continent very much on the back foot on any kind of development, any kind of advancement, from a global perspective. That's why the Sustainable Development Goals are such a big part of our narrative, right? And because shared value is about, simultaneously building a sustainable organization while contributing to a more sustainable society, as well as environment, it's so perfect in Africa, as Tiki said, that we all should be creating shared value as a business community. Now think about it like this. If we as business on the continent are innovating and solving specifically for our own challenges as Africa, seeing those challenges as opportunities, that's already giving us competitive edge. That's already advancing us, not just societally or environmentally, but also as a community, as a continental community and ecosystem, as it were. That really is where now we can talk about changing not just the landscape, but just the narrative as well of ownership.
To create shared value and consequently achieve sustainability and inclusivity, partnerships will be at the center. Carl Manlan, Vice President for Inclusive Impact and Sustainability for Visa Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa, speaks on why this is critical.
One example, we have in South Africa with Standard Bank, we joined a partnership because they have a footprint that allows them to touch many SMBs in Africa. The partnership is under our umbrella, which is called She's Next. And She's Next is really about the combination of providing skills and resources to SMEs. Another example, Visa Foundation. Visa Foundation utilizes two very important tools. One is grants, but the one that I'm most excited about is actually capital. And working with an organization called Arua Capital, based in Nigeria, that actually lend money to small, medium businesses in Africa, and especially women-led businesses, has been one of the most interesting things, in my view, that Visa Foundation has also been involved in.
Right. Obviously, we cannot talk about payments without talking about financial and digital literacy. How does or how can the payments ecosystem really support financial and digital literacy in Africa?
So, if we look at the number of Africans that have joined, that have accessed the internet recently, about 300 million people, each one of them has come to the system using different means. What is critical is that they both have the digital literacy and the financial literacy. Why are these two important? Many of the payments today, if you look at the fintech space, are allowing individuals to connect to the financial services, and the ability to be able to use the tools, the device that they have in their hands, but also make payments, is a great enabler for small and medium businesses. And I think this is really important. Another way to think about it, the gaming industry in Africa is booming. There are about 5 countries that have spent about $500 million last year. These individuals, we need to be able to bring financial education to them where they are. And I think this is really key, is to bring financial education to individuals where they are. Because if we're able to do this in different means, the improvement and the ability to change the conversation about skills, upskilling young people, will become different. It's not just about the skills available, go and get them, but we need to get to them. So we're working with an organization called Paradise Game, based in Abidjan, where they organize one of the large tournaments in Africa. It's called FEJA. It will happen towards the end of November. And they'll bring financial education through gamification to the online gaming community.
As some leaders have said, we have not yet cracked the code on mobilizing the full power of business to drive social impact and profit on the African continent. But it seems as though there's a renewed momentum among leaders to achieve inclusivity and sustainability. That's all we had for today's Focus On. See you next time.